Welcome to the interview. He's one of the major advocates for privacy, open internet and online freedom. An internet icon who tried to run for the Democratic nomination in 2016, but code is law, as they put it back at the very beginning of the century. Harvard University professor Lawrence Lessig is our guest today on France 24. Great pleasure to have you on set.
Thank you for having me.
So you're actually in Paris to promote a documentary titled Meeting Snowden, and you actually did a couple of times, including once back in December in Moscow, where you discussed the state of our democracies with Edward Snowden, of course, but also the founder of the Patriot Party in Iceland, Birgitta Jónsdóttir. Why is it so crucial to you to defend Edward Snowden?
Well, what I love about the title is that I think it really is a movie that introduces a different side of Edward Snowden to the public, because most of us have seen him as this hacker, tech spy, but he's actually a very deep thinker. And what I found extraordinary about the conversation was his ability to take every issue and turn it into a very serious and really incredibly intelligent view of the state of politics around the world. So I think it's important not just to see the courage that he demonstrated through what he did, but also the insight that he has for the way we've got to make democracy develop.
So actually, his residence permit in Russia has been extended until 2020, but 3 years is a century in this world. So do you fear Russia might play poker face?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think everybody recognizes he's a pawn in a very big game that's being played between the United States and Russia. And obviously, the terms of that game have been radically changed by the election of Donald Trump. So I think that I think all of us should hope for Snowden to have an opportunity to locate in a context that would be much more conducive to him contributing in an ongoing way without fear for his own personal safety.
So to deep dive into it, would other governments should allow Edward Snowden on their territory?
Of course. I mean, Snowden stands for a certain set of values now that I think resonates, especially with the generation, the millennial generation. Values about privacy, the importance of accountability inside of a government, the importance of limiting governments in their ability to spy on us. Now, of course, governments like the United States or Britain have not been eager to promote those values, and they're not eager right now to promote those values. But there are other governments around the world which I think would be eager and should be much more willing to stand up for these principles, and inviting Edward Snowden into their population would be a very powerful way to do that.
We'll actually deep dive into privacy in a few seconds, but are whistleblowers the new hero of the 21st century?
Well, I think that the struggle that they're going through will increasingly inspire people to their cause. You know, every free society needs the safety valve of whistleblowers. And that's especially what was necessary in the United States when we saw a government that had developed an extraordinary system of surveillance without any effective check, either from Congress or inside of the government. And what Snowden did was to give us an opportunity to hold our government to account. And I think that's absolutely the work of a patriot. And I think too few in the United States have been willing to stand up for and to defend Snowden for what he did.
So now WikiLeaks has revealed that the CIA is using apps on mobile devices and connected television to infiltrate the data of the American citizens. The more connected we are, the more vulnerable to mass surveillance?
Yeah, I mean, I think this was one of the sad truths that that I was trying to talk about in the very beginning of my work about the internet, that, the internet is an architecture, and it originally was an architecture that protected privacy and protected freedom of speech, but it was completely feasible to imagine how it would be changed to make it an architecture that defeated privacy and defeated the freedom of speech. And unfortunately, that's what we've seen happen. We've seen the technology develop in a way that makes it increasingly easy for governments to surveil and to control their citizens. And what we need in response is not the view that says we don't need government or we don't need any surveillance or any opportunity of government to intervene to stop crime, but instead an understanding of the way to balance privacy and security given the technology. The technology gives us the opportunity to have both, but governments pretend like the only way we can have security is to give up privacy. And I think that's a fundamental mistake.
Speaking of administrations and government, over the past few weeks, at the very beginning of April, the Trump administration has issued a resolution that repealed protections requiring internet services providers to get permission of their customers before collecting and dating and sharing data. A law that the Congress has backed since then is President Trump declaring war on privacy.
You know, I don't think it's anything as principled as that, as awful a principle as that would be. It's much more crass and corrupt. I mean, basically what's happened is that the United States Congress, in the control of the Republicans in the United States Congress, are bending over backwards to give industry in the United States everything they want so that they have the resources to fund their campaigns in 2018 to defend themselves against the extraordinary critique that they will face as the party of Donald Trump. So Donald Trump gives up internet privacy, not because he even knows what internet privacy is.
He can tweet about it.
He can tweet about it, but you know, it's not that he ever thought once about this issue before he became president. It's instead that his advisors say, look, these major telecommunication companies need to be on our side, and here's a simple, cheap way for us to make them on our side. Let's give them what they want with privacy. So what's astonishing is the very same time the United States Congress is saying internet users deserve no privacy, Donald Trump was denying access to the visitor logs at the White House, and the reason he gave was that lobbyists deserve privacy in their interactions with the government. So lobbyists trying to persuade Donald Trump about what to do in policy have privacy, but internet users don't have privacy in America. There's not a principle behind that. There's just the crass appeal to power that's necessary to raise the funds you have to get to run for politics in the United States.
Well, actually, let's go back to the question of corruption, because that's one of the major reasons you tried to run for the Democratic nomination back in 2016. Actually, you had one single motto: fixing our democracy first. Is democracy that broken?
In the United States, absolutely. There is no sense in which we have a representative democracy in the United States anymore. We have members of Congress who spend 30 to 70% of their time raising money from the tiniest fraction of the 1% to fund their campaigns. And when they do that in a very, French or Bourdieuian sense, they become disciplined to respond to the interests of that tiny fraction of the 1%. And that 1%, of course, does not represent America. And then the way that we allow gerrymandering to completely skew the districts so that you have these polarized members, either on the left or the right, produces a Congress that does not represent America. We don't have representative democracy, and until we do, we can't begin to address the problems that face America sensibly. We'll address them and give the answers that the special interests care about. That's privacy in America, or that's, we're never going to have global warming legislation in the United States Congress until we address this fundamental corruption. So my view is, and I think, unfortunately, not enough people have been willing to step up and say this, but my view is we've got to recognize this problem is the critical problem to fix if we're going to have the chance to fix anything else in a sensible way. And that's what I've been fighting for. But
the other problem when it comes to election and the fact that we still don't know if voters in many different voting processes will actually show up to the polls. So is voting outdated? Well,
in the States, and I don't want to speak for any country beyond the States because I don't know enough to say about any other country, but in the States, you have a huge proportion of people who don't vote because there is no reason for them to vote. So in the United States Congress, 85% of the districts are what we call safe seats, meaning seats where the minority party has no chance to win. Okay, if you're a voter in one of those districts and it's a off-year election where the president isn't in contest, what is your reason to vote? because your vote could never matter. If all of you showed up, you still could not affect the results. So there's a rational reason for them not to show up. And what we need to do is we need to create a democracy where everybody has a reason to want to participate in the democracy. And once we do that, then I'm willing to start criticizing people who don't participate. So, right now, I don't think there's justification.
Bill Clinton used to say it's the economy stupid. Would you say that it's democracy stupid right now?
Yeah, absolutely. It was the economy in the 1990s. Then we saw the extraordinary explosion of corruption in the way our Congress works, really caused by Newt Gingrich taking over control of Congress and the Republicans for the first time becoming competitive with Democrats. That's what led to this spiral of Congress becoming this ferocious fundraising machine. And that was, in my view, the real change in the ethic of what Congress is. So, yes, I think the slogan should now be, it's the democracy stupid, or it's the corruption stupid. Because, why is Donald Trump our president? I think the critical reason that the Clinton campaign wouldn't even engage was that the public saw him as the agent of change against this corruption and saw her as the manifestation of this corruption. Now, I think the public was incredibly clueless to see that in Donald Trump, but that doesn't change the fact that that's what, in fact, they were trying to accomplish by electing him president.
And that's what we have time for. Thank you so much, Lawrence Lessig, to be here with us on France 24 for the interview.
Thank you for having me.
And now you're back to the news on France 24. Stay with us.